Welcome to our web presentation, Reclassification, Understanding How to Use the Language Use Inventories, also known as Rubrics. This is presented by the Office of Multilingual Curriculum and Programs. In this web presentation, we'll connect you with the information needed to successfully complete your students' language inventories for the reclassification process. In order to follow along with this presentation, please have printed a copy of the 4 to 12 rubrics for reclassification. You may find the link to the reclassification rubrics below. Before we begin with understanding how to use the rubrics, it is important to understand why you have been asked to complete a set of rubrics for an English learner or a group of English learners. Here's why. You are a teacher of an English learner. The School District of Philadelphia asks teachers to submit rubrics for Ls who have been an English learner for 4 or more years, or who have scored a 3.5 or above on their most recent access test. Your L point person may also recommend students for reclassification, even if they do not meet this criteria. This criteria was established because a student who has been an L for 4 or more years should be nearing proficiency level, and a student who scored a 3.5 or above on their most recent access could potentially score 4.5 this year. Please keep in mind, while past access scores determine who receives a rubric, final reclassification decisions are dependent on access scores from the current school year, which are not available until June or July. For example, if you're completing rubrics in the 2018-19 school year, a final reclassification decision will not be made until 2019 access scores return. Per state mandate, only students who score a 4.5 or above on the current school year's access will be eligible for reclassification. Each rubric has 4 grade bands to select from: K, grade 1, grades 2 to 3, and grades 4 to 12. Before completing each rubric, make sure you select the correct grade band for the English learner you are completing the rubric for. Every teacher must fill out 2 rubrics for every English learner who is being considered for reclassification. As the student's teacher, you must evaluate the student's language ability within the 4 domains of language acquisition: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. When you complete each rubric, think about the student's language production from the beginning of the year and how it has progressed until now. The student's use and understanding of academic and disciplinary language must be evaluated. As you complete the rubrics, notice to what extent the student discusses an academic topic in both speaking and writing. This requires him to use academic vocabulary on unfamiliar topics, which are those that are not part of everyday life or ordinary social interactions. You will have to determine if the student is able to use content-specific vocabulary. When using the rubric, think about how often the student has produced and understood Tier 2 and Tier 3 vocabulary. Remember, the reason you are filling out these rubrics is because the student is being considered to exit ESOL. When reviewing the student's interactions, reading ability, and writing over the course of the school year, the production of Tier 2 and Tier 3 vocabulary is an indicator of the student's language ability. Pennsylvania is one of the 39 states that belongs to the WIDA Consortium. WIDA designs and implements a high-quality, culturally and linguistically appropriate system to support English language learners in K-12 contexts. The WIDA performance definitions are one of the many documents WIDA has created to guide educators to better understand the progression of language acquisition. Becoming familiar with these performance definitions will guide you to better understand how to complete the 2 rubrics for reclassification. WIDA developed 2 performance definitions, one for listening and reading, which is the receptive language, and one for speaking and writing, which is the productive language. Let's take a closer look at the performance indicators for speaking and writing. At first glance, you will see that the document showcases 5 levels. Level 1, entering, Level 2, emerging, Level 3, developing, and level 4, expanding. There's also, of course, level 5, bridging, and level 6, reaching, which we consider to be students who have reached English language proficiency. These levels may sound familiar to you because they are associated with an English learner's access score. These are the levels at which an English learner progresses in their language acquisition. Because you are evaluating English learners who are being recommended to exit ESOL, you'll want to focus on levels 4 and 5. These will be the descriptors within each of the dimensions of language that you'll want to familiar yourself with. The 3 language dimensions are discourse, sentence, and word and phrase. Take notice of the progression of language production across a level 3 language proficiency. Students at level 3 will begin to produce expanded sentence structures within the discourse dimension. In their language production, you will also begin to see the use of some compound grammatical structures within their sentence production and formation, as well as content-specific vocabulary. As they progress further up in language proficiency, going up to levels 4 and 5, their language production will be more organized, coherent, sentences will be produced. Students will slowly move away from using simple and compound structures and instead use more compound and complex structures. You'll notice the use of more specific and technical use of vocabulary. A printed copy of the 4 to 12 rubric for reclassification is now needed to participate. We will be using Rubric 1, Interaction, Listening and Speaking and Reading. You will be watching a short video where you will see Rubric 1 to score the student's language ability. Due to the nature of the video and our limited knowledge of the student, we can only practice with the listening and speaking components of Rubric 1. As you listen to the student-teacher interaction, pay close attention to how the teacher speaks to the student, what type of vocabulary is used, Tier 1, 2, or 3, and the discourse and sentence complexity used in this interaction. Begin with assessing the lowest performance descriptor and working your way up. You are now ready to view a sample interaction. We will be logging into ESOL Portal PA's Reclassification tool. You can find the link to the ESOL Reclassification tool below. The link will bring you to a page that requires a password. Please input the password ESOL in all capital letters. This will take you into the ESOL Reclassification tool. You will see a blue heading toolbar. Hover over the heading Grade Bands. A drop-down menu will appear. Please select the 4 to 12 grade band. This will lead you to a series of sample videos that will assist us in better understanding how to use the rubrics for reclassification. We will be using the Speaking Example 2 video. Scroll down until you see this video. Remember, as you listen to the student-teacher interaction, pay close attention to how the teacher speaks to the student, what type of vocabulary is used, Tier 1, 2, or 3, and the discourse and sentence complexity used in this interaction. At this time, pause this web presentation so that you can view the short video and fill out the speaking and listening components of Rubric 1. Before we begin with analyzing the rubric results for this individual student, it is important to note that a one-on-one interview or discussion is not needed with each English learner you are filling out a rubric for. The rubrics are filled out based off of the student's growth in their language skills from the beginning of the school year until the rubric must be submitted. Let's take a look to see how you scored this English learner. Let's begin with the student's speaking results. In this example, the student uses more complex language than a series of just connected phrases and short, simple sentences to talk in simple terms about familiar topics. He's speaking about an academic topic, the Earth's history, and using some academic, content-specific words. So for this reason, he meets the criteria under low. So let's move to moderate. This student uses some compound, complex sentences to talk about academic topics, but he struggles to form his speech in many places and makes some errors that impede meaning. He also struggles to pronounce many of the academic vocabulary words, which also impedes his communication somewhat. His sentences are complete, but he struggles with language forms and with selecting the appropriate vocabulary in some places. For example, the student said, have some smooth versus it is smooth. He also said 50 millions of year versus 50 million years. And he also said which they in the layer versus where they are in the layer. He obviously understands the content, but he has trouble explaining it. He seems to lack the necessary command of a broad enough range of language to express himself precisely, and his overall command of structures is not well developed yet. Because the student has difficulty with organizing his ideas, lacking in precise grammatical structures, the student meets the definition more of a moderate speaker. For this reason, we would give him a score of 0.3 and write it in the value box here. Now let's move on to the student's listening results. Note the language that the teacher uses when interacting with the student and the student's responses. In this example, the teacher is mostly asking simple questions to elicit descriptions and explanations from the student. Her speech is not overly slowed, and she is using complete as well as compound sentences with some Tier 2 and 3 academic vocabulary. For example, era, ivory, fascinating, period, fossil, chemical composition, radiometric dating. All these content disciplinary specific words are used. The student is able to understand without assistance or hesitation and respond appropriately. The student appears to understand language at a more complex level than phrases and high-frequency words related to familiar topics. However, the teacher's speech is not extended, and it is mostly structured around a particular topic and within a particular context. To meet the definition of high, the student must be able to understand extended speech, not just simple sentences. For this reason, we do not technically have enough evidence to accurately score this student as moderate or high. Speaking and listening language proficiency must be determined based on observations of students in various contexts, in either small group discussions, whole class discussions, social interactions, etc. In this case, we needed to see the student interact with other students in small group discussions and respond to other forms of unstructured language to see how effectively he is able to participate and comprehend. If you were to have scored this student's overall interaction, it is important to note that evaluating the student's speaking and listening abilities in various contexts will allow for a more precise and accurate evaluation. Take notice to the descriptors in the rubric. The rubric requires you to think about multiple tasks and social situations a student has participated in order to give a proper score. Rubric 2 for reclassification focuses on the final language domain, writing. Just as in Rubric 1, to give an accurate score, a student's writing needs to be reviewed over time. As you complete Rubric 2, you will have to review the student's use of the dimensions of language: sentence, structure, and word and phrase structure. You will also have to review a student's use of language around the different types of writing. For example, narrative, argumentative, expository. Being familiar with the Pennsylvania writing standards, you will find that the descriptors will be easier for you to evaluate. Remember the following as you begin the process to observing your English learners for reclassification. Review the grade band the rubrics are grouped in, considering the developmental level of the students. For example, the 4 to 12 rubrics are grouped within an extended grade range. Fourth graders will perform these language functions differently than high schoolers. You might want to ask yourself, for example, for a 6th grader, what does this type of language use look like? And can the English learner perform it similarly to a typical native speaker? The descriptors of rubrics 1 and 2 use the words can, connected to an action verb. Can use, can connect, can understand. This implies that educators, both ESOL and non-ESOL teachers, must witness this language production. Language should be observed in different contexts: small group, whole group, peer-to-peer interactions, to ensure that an accurate score is given for the student's speaking, listening, and interaction components. The more instances you can observe, the more accurate the score. However, if the student demonstrates descriptors from multiple levels, gather additional evidence. For example, you may consult the WIDA performance indicators, discuss with a fellow colleague, discuss with an ESOL teacher or multilingual manager. This new reclassification process promotes collaboration between educators in order to ensure that a student's language progress is accurately captured. Thank you for viewing OMCP's web presentation, Reclassification, Understanding How to Use the Language Use Inventories. Have a lovely day.